Welcome to Asia Society Japan Center Art for Breakfast. Please let me introduce today's host and art committee member, Seiichiro Yamamoto. どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Asia Society Art for Breakfast. My name is Seiichiro Yamamoto. I'm today's host and the moderator. I am the one of the founding member of Art Asia Society Japan as well as Art Committee member. Thank you very much for coming to today's program. Today's program will be both in person from International House of Japan here and webcasting online. Before we get started, there is a little housekeeping item. For in-person attendees here at iHouse, please mute your mobile phones. This session is being live streamed to the Zoom and Facebook Live. For webcast attendees, if you have any questions, please click on the Q&A function in the Zoom menu bar and type in your question. We will address your questions to the speaker. Now, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Noriko Kashiwagi-san of Art Platform Tokyo. Noriko Kashiwagi-san is director of Art Platform Tokyo. Art Platform Tokyo is a platform to introduce and market emerging artists based in Tokyo. With years of experience supporting emerging artists in Tokyo, mostly those who have ambitions to exhibit their works abroad, she founded Art Platform Tokyo in 2017, showcasing their artworks at ANA International Intercontinental Hotel in Akasaka. With that presentation will begin. Let me turn over to Noriko-san.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you Yamamoto-san for your kind introduction, and thank you everybody who are here this morning and those who are watching the webinar. Thank you Asia Society Japan for inviting me to talk and setting up this event. It's an honor to be here. For the past 10 years or so, my husband and I have been supporting art. We buy art through galleries, art fairs, and directly from the artists. We enjoy them in our apartment, sharing our excitement with our friends and family. Also, we've been supporting a number of exhibitions in the United States that features Japanese artists. The latest being Yusuke Asai's show, which will be held in the spring next year at Hancock Shaker Village in New York State. As the director of Art Platform Tokyo, one of my main jobs is to organize a show at the ANA Intercontinental Tokyo in Akasaka. Well, this morning, since we have some artists with us, let me show you some of the samples of their work. This is not a very big picture, but I have to admit. These are the works by Mitsumasa Kadota, left, and Ai Makita on the right-hand side. Again, they will be showing their works from May at the hotel. Mitsumasa, a guest speaker for the Asia Society in September, I heard, he creates abstract painting with beautiful complex clash of colors, whereas Ai, on the other hand, creates realistic works depicting metallic surface in organic way. This is a work from that we showed 2.5 years ago in her show. She depicted an image of a saxophone as the hotel is located right in front of the Suntory Music Hall. As in Yamamoto-san's introduction, my background is in finance. I worked on Wall Street and in Tokyo for 14 years before my husband got transferred to London. During his overseas assignment, I studied art history in London, and coming out of finance, I had a big interest in valuation, which led me to study art appraisal in New York City. After we moved back to Tokyo, I helped an organization to promote young artists called Dan, led by Miss Aso right there, who is here this morning. And then they were planning to have their first exhibition abroad. In hindsight, that was the turning point. During the time with Dan, I learned about artistic techniques, but moreover, I learned that contemporary artists are thinking by. I learned what contemporary artists what they're thinking by going over their artist statements. Artist statement is something that's a given in the Western art world, especially in the United States. However, for most of the artists, it was something quite new. Another important thing that I learned was the fact that their work needs to be seen. If the work is not seen, you can't and you won't grow as an artist. The art committee at the Japan Society, New York City, was consisted of scholars, collectors, trustees, and artists like Hiroshi Sugimoto. I was very proud to be involved in the creation of the Artists in Residence in New York City, a program now passed on to a private organization. Around 2017, I was asked if I can be of any help finding Japanese artists to show their work at ANA Intercontinental Hotel. And that was the beginning of the Art Platform Tokyo. Our three missions. Our three missions. A, to provide artists with alternative space to show their work. Art Platform Tokyo is not a gallery. With the backing of ANA Intercontinental Tokyo, we provide an opportunity to present emerging and underrepresented artists in Tokyo. We have 37 meters of brown wall over 3 floors. It's not an ideal white cube, but I tell artists that no collectors live in a white cube. 2, to make contemporary art more accessible to the public. The hotel is situated on the busy streets of Akasaka, and anybody can drop in and see the work 24/7. We aim to have more people, not only collectors, but regular people, to appreciate, buy, and enjoy art at home. 3, to support local artists who aim to work on a global stage. I want young people in Japan to aim high. Facts. There are some details regarding our operation. These are, each show usually lasts for 3 months. We normally have 4 shows a year. In the past 3.5 years, we had 3 solos, 8 2-artist or 3-artist shows, and 3 group shows. Majority of the artists are in their 30s. 75% of them had no gallery representation. Having said that, in 9 out of 14 shows, I had at least 1 gallery repped artist, which means that more than half the shows, I had somebody who was represented by a gallery. Even if they belong to a gallery, sometimes young artists don't get to show their work, especially when the roster includes big stars, somebody more famous producing pricey work. In fact, I know a young artist who hasn't had a solo show in the past 6 years. A bilingual website was created to introduce artists to overseas audience. Recently, we started featuring bilingual interviews and video in the section called Article. All the information about our website is on the flyer on the table. In the show, we place caption with price next to the work. And I have to admit that this was the most controversial point when we first started out. In most galleries, you need to ask for a price list. Many artists thought it was quite vulgar to show the price. And, I have to agree. However, we didn't want people to think that the artwork was a part of hotel's fixture or decoration. B, transparency, I think, is good. I guess this is another acquired trait from having worked in finance. We were ahead of the curve because nowadays, as the online art sales are soaring, this idea doesn't seem to be that crazy. Written contract. We always give out a simple contract to the artists and the galleries. When artists hear the word contract, basically, many freak out. However, as long as there is monetary exchange, it's not just art. It's art business. In business, anything is subject to change, and that's the reason why you need a set of rules as a foundation to hold a discussion. B, if the artists are going abroad, they will need to negotiate with their organizer and the galleries abroad. Our simple contract spells out everything from who pay what to when the payment will be made. We want artists to know the basic issues that are needed to be discussed. Contract still is a sticking point in the art world. But the last thing you want to have is a fight over money. As for genre, there are no restrictions. We have shown Nihonga, lacquer art, yuzen dyeing, and woodblock prints. I think boundaries between craft, design, and fine arts are disappearing. However, there are some restrictions set by the hotel. All works need to be two-dimensional. No installation at the hotel, no sculpture at the hotel. Now, more picture of the works from those artists who show their work in the past. Oh, you can't really see it, but this is a very beautiful work done by Toshihiko Iwata, who's sitting right there. He creates lacquer art with a contemporary twist, and this design is a modified Japanese family crest. I think it's very cool, but you can't see it all that much, I don't think. This is a work by Yusuke Asai from the last show. He is quite prominent artist who will be showing his art in the United States. For those who had never been to the hotel, this work was created on the central pillar between two main escalators on the lobby floor. This is a work from his famous masking plant series. And this is a scene from Yota Hanazawa's solo show from 2019. I think you can see the layout of the lobby floor. And this is 7-meter work by Momo Yoshino from 2 years ago. On the third floor, there's a wall between two restaurants, and this is 7 meters long. And finally, this is a current exhibition which is going on right now, just opened. It's a group show featuring 6 artists, including one artist unit. I asked art collectors, including Mr. Kawamura, who is a member of this art committee, to recommend artists whose work need to be seen. It's a good show, and I hope you drop by. Now, let's start from the overview of the market. Japan's share in global market is ridiculously small, considering the fact that we have the 3rd largest economy in the world. Japan's domestic art sales was $2.5 billion versus global art sale of $64.1 billion in 2019. US, UK, China had 82% of the global share. They dominate the market. And in Japan, galleries had 43%, department stores 25%, art fairs 8%, and auctions 6% of the art sales. In global market, galleries have more than half of the pie. In Japan, contemporary art had 20% plus of the sales. In recent global auction, 68% is in contemporary art. So, what you can say is the Japanese art market is small, especially in the contemporary art field, and it still has room to grow. So be optimistic here. In the world of art, there's a terminology called tastemakers. And tastemakers are the people or institutions who endorse the validity and thus create the value of the artwork. Basically, they influence the artist's career as well as the price. Individuals such as historians, critics, curators, consultants, and collectors, institutions such as museums and nonprofit institutions like yours. As for institutions, institutions, there are museums and nonprofit institutions like yours, and commercial entities such as galleries, auction house, and art fairs. They all are considered to be tastemakers. We will discuss 3 major tastemakers who greatly influence the art world: collectors, galleries, and curators. Collectors. As you can guess from the size of the market, the demand for artwork in Japan is small. The reasons? It could be anything from the lack of tax incentive to the housing situation, or maybe just customs. We just don't have custom to hang pictures on the wall. On the other hand, people in the United States and Europe have everything from family photographs to paintings hanging on the wall. There is an intrinsic demand for artwork, which we don't. Unlike the small number of major collectors in Japan, there are many, many, many serious collectors around the world. Some collect for social good. However, for many collectors, collecting art is a social status, and being on the board of a prominent museum is highly sought after, guaranteeing them to join the highest echelon in the society. They are one of the driving forces in the dynamic art ecosystem. Having said that, there are some small but notable trends in Japan. One is the young entrepreneurs, mainly in IT business. They seem to constantly exchange information through SNS, chasing similar types of artists, and bid up the prices in domestic auctions. They can easily afford, I think, Murakami or Nara, but they seem to stick with artists whose work are catchy and cool, what people call street art. The other is the emergence of regular salary people who buy works by younger artists, affordable art below maybe $2,000 or $3,000. I've seen an increasing number of them visiting our show. So, the demand and interest for the art is growing, and thanks to the low interest rate and rising stock market. Tastemakers, another tastemaker, galleries. Moving on to the commercial galleries. They are very, very important tastemakers here in Japan. According to Mr. Kitajima, there are roughly 1,000 galleries, including those shops selling posters in Japan. This is not a big number. Pre-COVID, New York City alone had 1,000 galleries, London 500 plus, and Berlin 400 plus. The size of the typical gallery here is small. In the art hubs like New York, London, or Berlin, there are a number of mega galleries who employs hundreds of staff members and established galleries with multiple outlets. Moreover, there are incubator galleries specializing in cultivating young emerging artists' career. With these different kind of galleries, it's not unusual for artists globally, in global artists, to switch gallery as their career progress. Mr. Koyama, sitting right there, is the representative of director of Kadan, Contemporary Art Dealers Association Nippon, an organization of reputable premier galleries. The average number of the artists I did some numbers, and the average number of the artists they represent at each gallery is about 20 on average. Close to 20% of Kadan artists are foreigners, making the entry for the local artist even harder. Increasing number of galleries are women there, and yet only 27% of the artists rep by Kadan were women. To be fair, Mr. Koyama, I went through our numbers, my numbers, and I found out that only 37% of our featured artists were women. As for Mr. Koyama, in his gallery, it was quite equal, 44%. So he did much, much better. But considering the fact that 70% of the art school graduates are women, there definitely is discrepancy. According to one research, the ratio of gallery representation in the United States is 65 to men, 35 to women. And the number hasn't changed since 2013. I see an increasing number of young artists who choose not to join gallery in Japan. I think these are the reasons. A, the advent of Instagram. And B, many alternative options and new opportunities. For instance, Professor Tsubaki at Kyoto University of the Arts is leading a project to showcase and market works created by their recent graduates. And I think it's working. I think Mr. Yamamoto is helping that. And recently, the salarymen collectors, the people that I talked about, they have been started, for some reason or another, there are numbers of people who are starting to open their own galleries showcasing affordable works by young artists. On the contrary, according to Next Gen Artists, a survey of the top 500 global artists under 40 years old, 98% of those global artists have at least one or more gallery representation. 60% of the top global young artists still keep their incubator gallery. So, with the advent of Instagram and new outlets, today's artists in Japan have more options. However, when it comes to top artists on a global stage, almost everybody rely on the support from the gallery to further their career. Curators. Majority of major museums in Japan are public. So curators are basically public servants. In many other countries, curators' role isn't limited to just curating the show. They are museums' important fundraisers. As public servants, basically curators in Japan are not allowed to curate shows outside of their museum. As a result, they are denied a chance to advocate Japanese art and artists abroad. On the contrary, in the Western world, curators are actually encouraged to curate other shows, especially large shows like Venice Biennale, Biennial, as that will heighten the reputation of the museum. In Japanese National Museum, within their $110 million revenue, 77% come from governmental subsidies and grants, but only 6.3% come from donation. At the Met, New York City, within that $515 million revenue, 57% comes from donation, and only 2.5% from government grants. So, these curators are expected to finance their own shows. Moreover, 80% of the new acquisition of artwork are donations by wealthy collectors. That's the reason why you may often see curators accompany major collectors in art fairs or galleries, advising them what to buy, securing a position that the piece will be donated to the museum one day. Curators are at the center of the strong pipelines connecting collectors, galleries, art fairs, art advisors, and auction houses, and of course, museums. Note that curators are listed as the most influential people after artists. So they're second influential people after artists in Art Review 100. They are very powerful tastemaker. Critics are another important tastemaker, perhaps because we live in a homogeneous country where disagreement or different opinions are not well received. It's hard to find critics or critiques with gutsy opinion. There are hundreds of critiques in English and in print and online. Well-respected critics will often write about the smallest show in the middle of nowhere, and many times being written up by critics often takes off the career of the young artist. Let me talk about the artists. Without them, we won't have any tastemakers. Majority of the artists here and abroad, for that matter, go to art school. 95% of the top 500 young global artists have a degree in fine arts. Here in Japan, getting into art schools is notoriously hard. Almost everybody goes to cram school to learn the basic skills like drawing, and they spend multiple years there before they are finally accepted to art schools. By the time they leave school, they are highly accomplished draftsmen. The reason why many collectors here are stickler to techniques may be due to the emphasis on skills in this country. It is said that there are over 10,000 students receiving fine arts fine arts degrees in this country. 8% of the students become artists, according to Mr. Tajejima of Sato Museum, and only 10% of them remain working as an artist after 10 years. Well, it is about the same because only 10% of the art school graduates choose to become artists in the United States. Although Japanese artists are highly, highly skillful, I often hear from foreign galleries saying Japanese artists are inward-looking and don't communicate well. I have to agree. Over the years, I had gone over close to 100 artist statements by young artists for their exhibitions or application for residence program. Many of them don't carry a clear voice, nor have a story to tell. Many write about how they feel without analyzing why they feel that way. On the other hand, artists in the West are trained to form and express their unique voices at school. This might not be an important factor for artists here. However, it will become one. It will become important if the artist wants to show their work abroad. Many artists here are hesitant to talk about money. Jenny Dixon, my friend, the former director of Noguchi Museum in New York City, used to say, all artists must think themselves as a small business owner. You need to think about your cost, who your audience is, how to market your art, etc., etc. Art is not your hobby. It is your profession. As I discussed earlier, more women are entering the industry, and yet sexism prevails. According to the Next Generation survey that I used before, the recent museum exhibition showcased work by almost equal number of young men and young women. But when it comes to the number of works sold in auction, men had 36 higher sales than that of the women. Be it gallery representation or auction, men still dominate the art sales. Ageism. Ageism is another problem. There is a bias once artists hit the age of 40 years old. Their spark as a young talent seems to disappear, and the attention moves on to the generation behind. So, to summarize, the domestic art market is making some progress here. There seems to be more demand, and with that, more galleries and alternative outlets are emerging. That's good. That's optimistic observation. However, except for the very few special cases, such as Murakami, Nara, or Kusama, Japan maintains its very small but uniquely localized ecosystem, setting itself apart from the dynamic global ecosystem. Globalizing the localized tastemakers mechanism may take years. Absence of global curator is especially notable. But I trust that that will change, and that should change. And the changes will be made from top down, with efforts by people like Mr. Koyama, Mr. Kitajima, or organizations like Kadan and universities. As for me, through supporting artists at the hotel, I'll keep conveying the importance of forming and expressing their own voices, so that one day they will fulfill their dream to show their work abroad. Oops. I was asked by Ms. Hidaka if I can provide some suggestion from my own experience, how the art committee at the Asia Society can support local artists here. Firstly, buy. If you buy art, you are helping the artists pay their bills. Let the artists keep working as an artist for a long time. Buy. 2, the best promotion or PR is actually the word of mouth. Talk about your new discovery. Show your new piece to others and share your excitement. As I mentioned, my husband and I have been writing checks for exhibition featuring Japanese artists abroad. By doing so, A, you make contribution to the program. B, you'll let the organizer know that there are some people who are willing to see Japanese artists included in the show. C, you get the network. I've known so many, I have got to know so many directors and curators abroad through our donations. Think what you can to do as a nonprofit. You are a nonprofit. Please take advantage of that. There are many wonderful forms of art that's hard to be featured in commercial arena. For instance, wacky installation, performance, or research-based art. You can show them. And most important, you have a wonderful, wonderful global platform called the Asia Society. Any domestic organization can do contests or exhibitions or whatever, but not on a global scale. Invite and involve curators from Asia Society, New York City, or Hong Kong. Involve ACC, your sister organization that has a wonderful list of artists. Or the Japan Society, the only organization in New York City with a gallery dedicated to Japanese art. The director there, Yusuke Kamiya, my friend, is very open to working together with you. So, before I end, a painting by Aru Sunuga, a young painter. Although her painting has a unique force or strength, she confessed in her statement that she's actually so afraid what other people think about her. She wrote that she's terrified being Japanese artist using oil paint. She's terrified being a woman artist. She's terrified being already in her 30s. But she's an artist. As my friend Jenny Dixon claimed, artists don't choose to be an artist. They have no option but to become an artist. So, even with all these adversities, she is determined to keep digging through the darkest cave, holding her paintbrush there as her guide, as her beacon. These are the people that I've been supporting. Thank you.
Noriko-san, thank you very much for your very impressive presentations. It's now that we move to the Q&A session from the floor and online.
Hi, Lauren Kawasaki. Thank you very much. That was really interesting. A lot of good data in there. You can see the banker in you. It's awesome. Good combination. So as I said, I'm opening a gallery on Saturday, and I'm really excited because we have 14 artists and 90% are women. So woo! We only have one man. I don't know how that happened, but no, we made a concerted effort. We wanted to really feature women in Japan creating art. And I think that's something the galleries need to do. They need to make a concerted effort. And even though sometimes it may feel forced, they have to say, we are going to take 50% women and try to do that over the year. I have a question, and it's something that's definitely affected us in getting this going. You know, the artists that we're working with, they want to work with us because they want lower commission, obviously. The 50% model that you take in Japan and many places is really not acceptable anymore. You know, cost structures have changed over time. So they want a lower cost structure. They can do a lot of the marketing themselves. A lot of them have huge Instagram followings. And they want shorter contracts, meaning that they'll be in a show and then they'll do some commissions, but maybe 6 months from now, anything that sells doesn't go to the gallery. So there's a lot of forces happening that are difficult for galleries to deal with. How do you think 10 years from now, the role of the traditional gallery is going to change on both the commission structure, the support structure, kind of just high-level view? I'm really intrigued by the massive changes happening right now.
Regarding the changes, I think the best person to answer that is Mr. Koyama, to be honest with you.
日本語でいいですか？
はい。
訳してくれ。大丈夫ですか？わかりました。うちのギャラリーは1996年にオープンして、今25年ぐらいやってるんですけども、本当に初めの頃は若いアーティストしか売れなくて、その50%、50% でやってるんです。日本のギャラリーってもっと昔は低かったんですね。20% ぐらいアーティストに払って、あとは例えば日本画の先生から作品を 20% ぐらいで買って、 それをデパートに卸すとかをしてて、それでマーケットを作ってたっていうのがあったんですけども、僕らの時はもう50-50ってもこれアメリカのシステムだと思うんですけども、そういったところからやって売れないから、売れないものもすごくバブルが終わった後だったんで売れなくて、すごい倉庫がどんどんいっぱいになっていくんですね。でうちも今千葉と田町とあと横浜の方かな、その3つぐらいの倉庫を借りて、それはだけどどこも同じ状況ですごい大変な感じになってます。だからそういったコストもかかるし、あとお客さんとかは20年ぐらい経ってからやっと美術館とかの自分たちのアーティストが年齢を重ねてキャリアを持ってやっと美術館に売れるようになったのはついこの10年ぐらいですね。だけど村上さんとか奈良さんとかやってた頃はオープンしてから5年後に彼らが両方の美術館でやったんですけど、東京都の現代美術館と横浜美術館で、その時はどっちの美術館も買ってくれなかったです。それから高松の美術館だけ買ってくれたんですけど、すごい安い値段でですね。だけどそれからやっぱしその後10年ぐらいしてからやっとマーケットがついてくる感じなんで、そこら辺はすごい厳しい状況です。だからすごい高い値段を売ることができたのは本当この5年ぐらいじゃないですかね。それまでは結構続けないといけないっていう感じですかね。いっぱいあります。在庫っていうかギャラリーアーティストから預かってる感じですね。そうはいはいはい。やっと最近ね、工藤真希子さんっていうアーティスト、今この間の展覧会やって大体うちのギャラリーで売れたんですけど、今アートフェアとかそういうところに出てって、すごく今ね本当毎日のように問い合わせが来てて、売れるようになってだんだん先がなくなっていってますよね。そういったことは何人かのアーティストにはあるんですけど、全てのアーティストにあるわけじゃないんで、それは大変ですけど、そういうその海外へのアートフェアとか、そういったところに行ってそれを売っていくチャンネルを作っていく。あと今そのネットとかそういったものも結構駆使しながらやるっていうのが実際のところで、なんともそれはうんとしか言いようがないみたいな。だから一応それ努力はしますけど、そんな感じです。
The thing is, first of all, let me just introduce Koyama-san. He is probably the most famous gallerist in Japan. He said he sort of had like young stars, like when he started 28 years old. That was Yoshitomo Nara and Murakami, basically. That's his gallery, okay? And I think what he wanted to say is that it takes time, basically. And this is a very important point. One of the hardest and one of the probably most expensive job for gallerists is to manage the artist, right? I'm not talking about just for that show, but for years, okay? So, and of course, that's really, really tough. And that's very expensive as well. So that's what he's saying, like Murakami and Nara and everybody, it took years for them to become really like a superstar. But as he was very honest to say that, there are very lucky few ones, and there are many other artists that he carries on the roster that may not be as popular as whoever.
No, I understand. I think that model is going to
Yes.
I don't think it's going to take 20 or 30 years anymore, because as these artists come out, they're immediately on Instagram. I mean, that's a negative in Japan, is the universities have to work harder. They shouldn't let anyone graduate without an Instagram or social media presence. It's shocking to me. But as soon as they get out in the market, they can do that. They can be on Clubhouse. They can be on Nifty Gateway. They can be on all of these digital platforms now. So that's what I'm wondering. And yes, I'm going into this world, but you have to go into this world knowing that it's going to change and it's going to innovate. and it's going to be different. So it's really a fascinating discussion of where is this going, and what does that mean for the artists? Because the artists have to have new skill sets. The artists need to own their business, as you're saying.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but I think that it's a open-ended discussion that we have to have. Nobody really knows what's going to happen after COVID, right? Especially now that we have online sort of sales and all that. But it's great to have Instagram and all that. The thing is that how you define the success, that's a big question. If you want to, for those of the artists who want to sort of work and show their work on a global basis, I think Instagram alone may, for most people, will not be enough. I mean, as the numbers showed, 98% of the global successful artists actually had gallery. And I tend to, when I think the artists that I have presented, when they ask me about galleries, I actually say to them that you either need a gallerist, or for 99% of the artists, I tell them that you need a gallerist or a manager, okay? Because basically, 4 reasons. Artists, although we have Instagram, I found many artists are not good at marketing, okay? B, number 2, they can't price their artwork right. It's hard, it's an objective thing, okay? C, they can't really filter their work, which means just screen their work. They can't really tell which work is better, which work is not worth basically, showing. Don't show that work. They can't really decide it. 4, they can't schedule their exhibition and all that. It's hard. When you are working alone, I see a lot of artists just cramming in all those exhibition schedule. Exhibition after exhibition after exhibition. The quality of the work, I notice, start to come down, okay? So for those 4 reasons, I tell most, or almost all of the artists that they need a manager or a gallerist if you want to keep on doing your work, if that makes sense. But I think Instagram is real, and there will be more, I think, ways. And I think the art world is not right now democratizing itself, so which is good. Many people, we have such a small ecosystem here that I think it's good. Any other question?
There's some questions online. One is from Vincent Marcel. He's asking how many women-owned art galleries are in Japan. Do you know? Well, we have one gallerist who's a woman here, but what do you think is a percentage? Not too many? Well, we have 2 actually.
Okay. Well, I think we can, Kitajima-san?
You have 80 Kaden members listed on your website. How many of those 80 are female-owned? I know Misako is one, Rosen. You can count them on your hand, so not that many.
I think for the 20 or so, the official member, it was like 7 or 8. Yeah, so it's still growing. It's growing, but it's not. Yeah. Kitajima-san, do you have any?
皆川さん、結構いますね。結構います。
え？10%. Okay, yeah, 10%.
だけど、すみません、全国美術商連合会っての僕出てるんですけど、それは日本洋画賞とか古美術とかそういういろんな協会があって、それが50人ぐらいいるんですけども、全員男です。
Okay, so like there is I guess a very traditional association that includes like yoga artists or antique dealers, as well as contemporary artists. There are like 50 members, and everybody is men. So that's that.
There's a question from Glenn Fukushima in Washington, D.C. And one question is, what specifically do you do to challenge Japanese artists to form their voice and have a statement?
Make them write. Make them write an artist statement. And also have a description. We have asked our artists to not place the caption, not only with prices, but their voices.
When you say, state their voices, what do you specifically specify? I mean, in terms of content, can you give us an example? Say voice, like what?
What do you want to say through your art? That's the voice. Not necessarily what you feel, per se.
There's another one. How important is fluency in English for Japanese artists to succeed globally?
Okay. I knew this question would come up. It's better to be able to speak English per se. I was listening to Clubhouse where Murakami-san was talking. He speaks with such a broken English, but it does come across. I know Sugimoto-san speaking in English. He's lived there forever, but his English is not that great. It's not to put it this way, if everybody has to be fluent in English or whatever language that is, there will be no global business, okay? Sony or Matsushita or Nissan or Toyota, they went to the States without fluent English, okay? But they succeeded, which means that if you have something to say and if you have the message, that's the most important thing.
Okay, we have a lot of questions coming online.
Oh my
actually.
God! Oh my God!
So there's so in terms of collecting or building a collection, this person says, in Japan, because of the taxation system, there are only limited number of rich people and big houses. Isn't this the basic reason why the art market hasn't grown?
I think that's part of it, but I think it has a lot to do with the tradition. In our Japanese home, to be honest with you, it's just a huge box traditionally, right? Divided by like sliding doors and it's paper. There's no walls, and we didn't have walls until very recently. So I think that's that. So although people buy like Louis Vuitton bag, they don't have the notion that art can be bought. I think that's important. That should change.
Here's another one. This is a diversity question.
Oh, okay.
Although there are not many, there may not be a market for them, but do you think it's important to have more foreign artists of color to be featured in Japan?
Yes.
Do you think that having more diversity, any kind of diversity, do you think that would be a good influence or inspiration for local artists?
Yes. But that means that there's going to be more competition. So beware, local artists. Yeah.
And then there's a question about education, about a pathway for artists to become an artist in Japan. As a career pathway are the career pathways highlighted in K to 12 education here? You had mentioned earlier that artists can only be artists.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe kind of thinking through that, is that like influenced here in Japan, or maybe we have somebody here that can answer that?
Well, we have some artists here.
So when I first got to my school, what they told me was that so my class has 24 people, and that's usually it's like a very small class, but so they said that only one or two, one person out of 24 can get actually succeed, and that only one of them was special. And that statement itself is incredibly absurd to me. But yeah, the mindset that only a certain genius can succeed, and that, I think they have a very limited idea about artist succession. And I also interviewed the head of the school last year. It was a student classman interviewing the head, but when I asked him about the career path of most of the artists can take, he had I don't really want to point fingers, but he said that thinking about a career path itself is something to be ashamed of. And that I mean, just to become an artist without having any idea of a financial plan or anything, artists should just try to make it into the world without I don't know, I think they don't have any idea about how to manage the students after they graduate, even facilitate any sort of I don't know, how do you say it, sorry, career development. Yeah. They have no idea what they're doing. I don't know. That's my personal opinion about my school, but I don't know. Maybe private schools are more different. Okay.
Well, as far as career is concerned, Musashi no Bidai or Tama Bidai, I checked, 80% of the people actually go and work in corporate world. I think Geidai, your school, University of the Arts, Tokyo University of Arts, have a little bit lower. As far, I think that artists, I think many people, I mean, only 10% of the artists, art school grads in the United States choose to become artists, right? So many people go to get their fine arts, but there are a lot of options these days, especially in internet or whatever, for whether, I think your question was whether there is some kind of a education before the college level, right? The only thing I'm not, I don't know, I don't know whether I'm gonna answer this right or not, but the only thing that I can say is that for this speech, I got a copy of high school textbook, art high school textbook by the government. And basically, except for 2 pages, they were all about which art is good and the reason why, and all about techniques. So I think the students here who want to go to art school probably have this notion that they have to be quite skillful. That's number one. And they already have a notion that what's good, what's accepted historically, and all that. But I know from having a kid who is brought up abroad, they have a system called IB, International Baccalaureate, right now. And a very important subject they have to take is called theory of, I think, it's basically theory of thinking or whatever. It's like, it's about philosophy. And in that, for 18 years old kid, in the college examination, they ask, what's the value of art? Okay? What is art? Is there good art or bad art? Explain. Okay? So, for many artists who go to college or who are entering college, I think art means that you got to think, and it has to have historical context to it, and that's missing, I think, in Japanese art education. Every art is backed by some very important people that has a social influence. Every art is basically reflection of the society. And that kind of thing, I think, is missing in art education here.
So this is going to be, I think, the last question. And this is a question to you, Noriko-san, in regards to your choices for your show at the ANA Intercontinental Hotel. And so basically, do you have any specific guidelines other than the 2D artworks to picking your art pieces?
I don't have any guideline. But I basically choose or get introduced to artists through network. I ask artists who showed at my work, can you introduce me somebody? Yeah. And I think, well, I'm going to sidetrack here, but I think that's the reason why I have more men artists than women. It seems as though that artist network, is basically dominated by men. And I think it's the same with corporate world in a way, right? But to answer your question, I don't have any criteria.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me conclude this program, this session. Again and again, Noriko-san, thank you very much for your impressive presentation. Please give me a hand. And a lot of questions, very interactive. And I personally particularly impressed with Noriko-san's strong passion to support young artists and global perspective to look at the Japanese art market, especially from financial point of view. And we all feel that I especially feel Noriko-san's love for art and artists. So with that, on behalf of Art Committee, as Asia Society Japan's tradition, I'd like to present certificate of appreciation